Okay, so I have got my zipper all prepped and ready to go. And I just to let you know, I held the zipper up against the dress and just a little bit above the metal stop at the top, and just kind of walked it down, and then I sewed my 5/8 seam up to where the metal stop is here at the bottom. Okay, so this is all sewn permanently here, and now I'm ready to put my zipper in. I'm going to do my underlap first. We're using the open method, which means I have not stitched the seam, the center back seam, where the zipper is going to go in the back. I've left it open, and you'll just like the sample. So now what I'm going to do is my zipper is going to go in. I'm going to do the underlap first. So I'm going to line up my zipper to the dress, and I lower it just a little, about 1/8 of an inch, so I can put in a hook and eye there if I'd like to. And then once I get this underlap situated where I want it, I'm going to open up the seam, and I'm going to tuck in the end of the zipper and then close it back again. So that's a little different way to treat the top of that zipper. Okay, so I'm going to do it one more time because it's tricky. So here's my underlap, 1/2 inch. I've pressed it under 1/2 inch. So it does not match up to where my seam is. It's a little bit less. And now I'm going to lay that underlap fold right next to the zipper teeth, and I'm going to go up about 1/8 here, and then I'm going to hold on to the zipper here while I unfold the seam, and I'm going to tuck, just so you can see, I'm going to tuck the end of the zipper in between the seam allowance and the dress, and then I fold that back underneath the dress again, and see how nicely that finishes off the top of that zipper. I have a lined bodice here, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin that good so that it goes through all my layers there, and then I'm just going to fold. I've already basted the lining to the dress, and now I'm just going to take that folded underlap, and I'm just going to line it up along the zipper teeth, and then I'm going to pin that carefully. Okay. I'm just going to keep going down. Now this is going to get kind of bulky here because I have my tucks, 1, 2, 3 tucks. So that's going through a lot of layers of fabric. In fact, I could even I could trim a little bit here to get some of that inner tuck out of there, and that will help it. But right where I stitch, I can't do much about that. There, okay, I've taken out some of the seam allowance, but right where I stitch, it is going to be bulky. But I'll just go slowly, and I have a good sewing machine, so it'll go over it fine. Okay, and so I'm just going to keep going down. Keep that stitching under there, and I keep walking my zipper down that seam. Okay, and I've almost got it pinned. And at the very bottom, I want you to notice that I have got my 1/8 of an inch difference right here, because remember, this is trimmed at, or I'm sorry, it's folded and pressed at 1/2 an inch. So because I've sewed this at 5/8, I have that extra 1/8 of an inch. That's extremely important. I need that extra 1/8 of an inch so that the top overlap will go over top of the stitching. So that's why I've got to have that little 1/8 of an inch difference here, or it won't look good at the bottom. Okay, let's go over to the sewing machine and I will sew this underlap on. Okay, first thing I'm going to do here is put in my zipper foot. Take out number 1 and put in number 4. Remember, we need the real skinny little zipper foot so that I can get my needle right next to the zipper teeth. And now I'm going to move my needle over as far as it will go. And I'm going to undo my zipper a little bit so that I am not trying to sew around the little pull, zipper pull, and I'll go ahead and start. Now, okay, sometimes we start at the bottom and go up, and it doesn't really matter, it just matters which I'm going to do it that way. Actually, I'm going to start at the bottom because that feels more natural to me to have this on the left. So I'm going to move my needle over to the other side now. There we go. And I'm going to make sure my thread tails are where they need to be. And I'm ready to go ahead. The only thing is actually I'm going to change my mind. I'm going to do it the other way because I want this to be exactly where it needs to be at the top. And if it stretches a teeny bit at the bottom, it won't matter. So let's go back to the top. So I'm going to move this right here. Sometimes the presser foot will push it along a little bit, even though I'm going to try not to let it, and I'll sew pin to pin. But I'm going to go ahead and do this side. Start at the top. Okay, so you want to be in like just, you know, you're just right on the edge there. So that's like a 1/16 of an inch away. Okay, and I put my zipper foot down, and I'm going to back stitch a few stitches here. So I'll go forward a few. I just need to make sure that this isn't gonna, I gotta get this over on the other side. The thread. There we go. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna go back a few stitches. And then I'm ready to go forward. And I just go right over top of those stitches. And take out my pins as I get to them. And if you keep kind of the edge of your little foot, your foot's kind of square here. So if I keep the edge of the foot right at the edge of the fabric, then my stitches will be in about a 1/16 of an inch, which is right where I want them. Okay, and if you sew close to your pin, keep your fabric where you want it. And then just take your pins out as you get to them. Okay, now I'm down at this point, so I'll sew to my pin. Okay, now you lift it up. I'm going to take the pin out and I'm going to close the zipper. So I just keep moving that little zipper pull so that it's out of my way, and I'm not trying to go around it, because then that would cause my stitching to kind of not, it wouldn't be as straight if I had to do that. Okay, now I'm coming to my, where I have the tucks, and not every dress of course have those, but this one does. And so this is quite bulky, so I've got to make sure that I don't stop here, that I keep it going. And I gotta make sure I also have that where it's supposed to be along here. Looks like it was kind of coming out. Looking good. Okay, we're coming along good here. Okay, now here at the bottom, I can actually go, I can get this out of here. I can actually pull this over to the side, and I can, well, I'm just going to go down where my pin is. That should do it right there. Okay, and we'll just back stitch a few stitches. Okay, so let's see how that looks here, and then we'll go ahead and pin. Okay, all right, so now we'll go ahead and do the other side. But you can see how nice that is. It's just right next to the zipper tape, as close as you can get. Pretty much just line up the fold right to the edge, and it looks like it's working great. So now I'm ready to go ahead and pin the other side. Okay, so I've got the underlap all sewn in. Looks fabulous. And now I'm going to do the overlap. So because I have my 1/8 of an inch difference down here at the bottom, when I lay the overlap over top, it will come over top of the underlap by 1/8 of an inch, which is enough to cover the stitching and that underlap. So that's perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the overlap on top where it goes, and I'm going to pin it. Now, one thing that we have to be careful of is that because I cross over a seam, I'm going to first pin it there and make sure that matches up perfectly. Okay, and I've got these tucks, so that makes a big difference. Now when I pin, I want to pin the center back to the zipper tape, but I don't want to get this side in my pinning, so that I can then open my zipper, and with the zipper open I can follow the guidelines on the throat plate. So I'll show you that. So when I pin, I just pin this side. Now, and so I just want to make sure I pin the dress to the zipper tape. Okay, now that I've got this pinned, I can now go back and make sure this is laying very smooth from this where it matches up here down to the bottom. So I'm going to put in a few pins, and I want to start my top stitching right at that point, where right below that metal stop. So I'm putting a pin right there, and that's where I'll start my stitching. And then I'm going to do another one right here in the middle. And again, I'm pinning the dress to the zipper, but I'm not getting any of this side of the dress. Now, if you'll notice, I'm doing this on a sleeve board. That makes it much easier, because then it allows me to get to the back without worrying about the front. The front is over there on the other side, so I have my sleeve board to get that going. Okay, so again, I've got to make sure that I line up my tucks here, because I not only have to line up my seam, but I've got tucks going in here, so I got to make sure. Whoops. Okay, and this is hard to pin because there's so many layers, but if I go straight down, I go through the sleeve board, and then I just barely lift it up. Oh, and I didn't get it. So I've got to try that again. So let me see if, okay, I got it that time. Okay, so continue going up and keeping, I'm going to put in a few extra pins here where this tuck is, and I've got it barely. Okay, and I only want to go over 1/8. One of the common mistakes that students make here is that they start out by the overlap going over top of this stitching by 1/8. I'm going to put a pin right here because I can see that starting to pull out. And then by the time they get, oh, see, that's not really holding it there. By the time they get to the top, they've overlapped it like 1/4 of an inch or so. So right up here. So you don't, like, I want to make sure I don't end up way over here somewhere. Just keep it at that 1/8 all the way up. Okay, so I'm going to just keep pinning as frequently as you feel like you need to. And I did quite a bit on those tucks so that I could keep those matched up. And then see right here, it wants to overlap by about 1/4 of an inch. So I've got to pull it back and overlap it by 1/8. Okay, so again, that's a common problem is that students make, is that they overlap this way. They start out at 1/8 and it ends up way too much. Okay, I'm here at the top, and look how beautiful that looks. But I've got to do something. So I'm going to take this out now. Well, I'm going to take it out this direction. Okay, when I get to the top, I'm going to overlap that by 1/8. So I've got my fingers under there, and I'm going to pin that. But I've got to turn it to the back now, and I'm going to tuck that zipper tape in between the seam allowance and the dress, just like that. That's how I finished off the other one, and it looks really great. So now I'm going to pin that. Okay, and I need to go all the way. Well, except I have to be careful here because I need to keep that pulled over so that it goes over that amount. So I might even, I'm just going to put a pin in right here just to keep that where it goes. And then I can go ahead and pin it from this side now. Okay, there we go. And now I can take this one out. And then when I unzip it, I'm going to move that zipper, pull. See right here, I can even get that in there really well. And I am going to pin a little bit from this side just to keep that in where, keep that folded underneath. And then I'll come back and tack that down. Okay, so that is looking good. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and top stitch and do my sewing. So let's go over to the sewing machine now. Okay, I'm ready to go ahead and stitch the overlap. And one thing you want to make sure, get everything lined up. Make sure that you've got your thread on the top pulled out, a long one, and on the bottom it's pulled out because we're going to be tying this. And make sure this is your needle pull, your thread pull. Just make sure this is up at the top. Okay, so now I'm going to put my needle down in, okay, right where I want it to go, and that's right below the metal stop. And I've got a pin there. And now that I've got my needle pulled down, sometimes it will, this is the take-up lever, that's what it is. Sometimes when you go down, put your needle all the way down, the take-up lever might take up a lot of your thread so you don't have as much left. So I'm going to pull it just a teeny bit to make sure. There, we should be okay. And I'm going to take out the pin now that was marking the bottom of the zipper and put my my presser foot down. And now I'm ready to go across the zipper, but I'm below the stop, so there shouldn't be zipper teeth here. But I still go slow just to make sure everything goes across and keep it straight. And I want to go 3/8. So now I'm this far. I'm going to measure, and it looks like I'm a little bit over the 3/8, but I should be okay. Okay, so let me put that back down, and I'm just going to measure that again. And I'm just barely over the 3/8. So I think I'll just keep it at that. I'm like a 1/16 over, so that's okay. I don't want to do 1/2 inch, but if I'm a little bit over the 3/8, that's not going to be a big deal. Okay, now what I have to do is for about 1 inch or so, I have got to sew on this edge straight up before I undo my zipper and use the throat plate for my guide. So I'm going to put a little pin just right here where I want to kind of guide me. Okay, so that way I can keep it where it needs to be. And remember, I'm over this side, I'm 1/8 of an inch over from on the underlap, so I should be good there. So I'm just going to go ahead and go up, and I've kind of got my pin, and I just kind of move it as I go. Okay, and that's good. Yep, everything looks good. So now I'm going to go a little bit further, and I can even kind of hold my my tape measure, and that helps me. Okay, that's good. So now I've got that far, and everything's looking nice and straight. So now what I'm going to do is open up my zipper and get that zipper pull out of the way, and it's still in there a little bit, but now I can lay this down flat, and I can put this against the throat plate and line it up. Okay, now it's not going to line up at the 3/8 because because I'm not right on my seam. So I just look to see where the 3/8 is on that edge, and it's just barely over the 1/2 inch mark, because remember, I'm back in. So now I can just keep this open here and lined up. Keep it lined up against my throat plate where I want it to go. Okay. Okay, and I'm just going to make sure I'm keeping that. Yep, that's good. So if I just line it up to my 1/2 inch here, which is just a little bit over 3/8, but I think that will be good. You want to go, it's better to go a little over than under. Now remember, I'm trying to line this up to the other side. So make sure you sew right to the pin before you take it out, okay? Because the pin is holding it where it needs to go. So now I'll just keep going, and I'm getting to where the tucks are, so it's going to be bulky, but I keep going right to the pin. Okay, so far so good. It should line up if I just keep the pin holding the zipper to where it goes. See, again, this is kind of bulky right through here. Okay, and keep it going. I kind of lift this up just to make sure the tuck is laying flat. This makes it tricky, this little one. Okay. Keep that nice and flat through there. There's nothing wrong with going slow. I've decided going slow is good, because when you go too fast, sometimes you end up unpicking. So that actually takes more time than just doing it slow and steady the first time. Okay. Keep that fold right where I want it to go. Okay, and I'm getting up here to the top. Almost done. Okay, and I've got a pin on the other side, so I've got to get that out. Now when I get up here to the top, I am going to back stitch a few stitches because my collar lays over top of this. Okay, all right. Let's take that out. and see how it looks. Get it out here from the sewing machine, and I can just show you right here. First of all, look at it and see, does it look nice and straight, and was I able to maintain the 3/8? And yes, that looks great. Now let's zip it up and see what we got, and look at that. It matches really well. You can see here that the tucks are all matching nicely across the zipper, and it looks nice and straight, and we're good. Doesn't that look great? So it did move like a centimeter, not even, well, a millimeter. Anyway, you can see it looks really good, and even though it's bulky right there, it was able to lay down. So I can go back inside over here and take out some of that extra. But, and then look here at the top. That's another thing, is you really want your top to be straight across, matching really well. So that looks great. So we got our zipper in. The only thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to tack down this corner, and I'm going to tack down this corner so they stay out there, and then I can decide if I want a hook and eye. This is up close enough to the top. I don't think I'll put a hook and eye in. I did go a little bit further and pushed it down a little bit, but it basically just made it so it met up really well. And now the other thing is I have some raw edges here on the dress, so I'm going to go back and I can serge this, or I can just zigzag it. And I like to keep the full 5/8 for when I'm pressing a 1/2 inch and 5/8 here. So I like to keep the full seam allowance. Sometimes when we serge, we end up cutting some off, and it throws us off. So I just left it here, and then I'm just going to go back and do a little zigzag or something here to finish this off. So that, with finishing off those edges, some people like to press it first and get the exact pressing where it goes, and then serge it, and then put the zipper on. But I'll go back and do that later. I'll just go back and finish this off now, and I will tack this down, and I'm totally done with the zipper. So there you go.